This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'm going to welcome to the show this morning, Nolan Del Campo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning. Terry Batcher.
Hiya, kids. Hiya.
And I'm not sure, do we have Harriet with us?
Pardon me?
Okay. Well, when and if she goes here. Oh, there she is. Good morning, Harriet.
Yeah. Yeah, good morning.
You can barely hear her.
Yeah, she's on the phone.
Oh, you can barely hear me?
No, I hear you fine.
I hear you. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So
we've got some rabbit holes to go down in the next couple weeks, some research. I think some things that'll be shocking, some things that will kind of make you go, when it comes to Harriet Solves and the things that she's discovered. But I'm going to go ahead and flip over to the presentation at this point. All right. So in some of my research, of course, humble being one of those words that we saw on the Tom Voigt letters and in regards to the Tim Miller letter. So humble was this word that was chosen and used in a couple of communications. And knowing instinctively that Tim Miller was under the impression that this was revolving around, let's say, the oil industry. At least that's what he received, the message that he received to mean that there was some connection to oil. So I started looking up some things, and I actually came across an oil company called Humble Oil and Refining Company. And this particular letter here that's occurring, they're actually merging with Exxon Oil, which was even more interesting because, of course, Humble is a town in Texas on the outskirts of Bush International Airport. So everybody understands my Humble connection and Bush. But then it turns out it's also an oil company. And the reason why that I fell into this little kind of, research is because of I call them the Dear Jane letters. I found them in the FOIA file. And it's basically a gentleman saying how at the age of 17, he got involved with the wrong people, got hooked up with the mob, became a career killer. And one of the things that he had stated is that the oil companies such as Exxon, Shell, and Standard Oil are relative jobs that the assets or CIA operatives actually held for cover and flexibility. So they would work at a gas station, is what he was indicating, that this was their cover job for who they really were. So climbing down that rabbit hole obviously led me to an actual Humble Oil Refining Company out of Texas. This is in 1972 that they're actually merging with Exxon. And of course, we have that juxtaposed to a picture I found in Nora's belongings for Christmas of December 1972, which actually was in Jack's belongings in the end. But clearly, this was Nora's handwriting at the top of this. But again, kind of instills the fact that Jack is the keeper and collector of all things, including this particular picture, which I think that this alludes to the fact that Jack is definitely in Dennis Kaufman's life, as he suspected at this point in time. That brings us to the next murder, and this one is actually out of Texas. So we're going to start seeing what they call the I-45 mystery murders now. And we know that Jack is constantly back and forth to Texas. At one point in time when I was going through his belongings, I was actually able to put together a stack of pictures that coincided with the dates that Dennis Kaufman had for murders that occurred in the I-45 killings and the Texas murders. He had quite a list. I want to say there was about 17 or 18 murders that were listed on this list with dates involved. And as I was going through Jack's belongings and his pictures, I could actually find pictures of him in Texas during that time. So that's why I started to entertain the I-45 murders, because we know that if he's the Zodiac here killing and he's going back home and visiting mom all the time, that we have to take into consideration that some of these murders, unsolved crimes, could also be the work of him while he's there. So that brings us to January 3rd of 1973 for Kimberly Pitchford out of Pasadena, Texas, in the Houston area. Just a quick note, she was 16 years old, disappeared while after a driving class. She was strangled by a small cord. She was found in the water, and she was half nude. So a lot of these things are kind of coinciding with some of the other murders that we're hearing about back in the Santa Rosa Hitchhiker area. That led me down another hole. After finding this excerpt on her, somebody had written quite a nice article to kind of give us some background on this girl's death. And I got to see the rabbit hole that the suspects went down. And this is the kind of stuff that I want people to be prepared for. Jack had acknowledged to Dennis that he was aware that people were serving time for his crimes, that there were people who were jailed or arrested for things he knew he did. So we're going to cover some of that. The way they actually force fit their suspects in, or even get them to cop to something that they didn't do. So it says it's been 5 decades since 16-year-old Kimberly Pitchford vanished from the parking lot of J. Frank Dobie High School in Houston, Texas on January 3rd, 1973. The shy sophomore had just finished her first driver's ed class that concluded at 6 p.m. and was supposed to call her parents for a ride home, but the call never came. 2 days later, her partially clad body was found 30 miles away, floating in a canal beneath a wooden bridge in Brazoria County on County Road 65 in Iowa Colony, Texas. She'd been strangled, and her case remains unsolved. Do you have anything in regards to a Kimberly Pitchford, Harriet, in your solves?
Yes. So it is definitely in America's Most Evil, and I think you said that you don't have the book or whatever, so maybe I'll send you the book again. Definitely, he's got information on that, and it's just really sad.
So is he telling on somebody who killed her, or is...
Oh, yeah, he's definitely telling on a bunch of people, him and his crew mainly, but he's not saying this time the information is coming from the crew, but he's telling on what happened with, so shall I just read the solve? So
for the solve for what?
Ed Bell is the one.
Hold on. Oh, so you did a stenographic solve on Kimberly Pitchford?
The evidence. No, the evidence and clues that are relayed about the information on her, where she was and what parking lot and what date, and the information of what canal and beneath the wooden bridge. I mean, I can go on and on, but
oh no, go ahead, read the solve. I did not know that you had something on her. Go ahead and read that solve.
Oh, I got the 2 books in one in America's Most Evil of all these solves. Anyways, let me read it really quick. It says Nixon Myrtle Walker, aka Marjorie Allette, hid November 22nd, 1963, Kennedy Palmdale, CA autopsy photos in Janus 27 sound system, who owed Saudi Prince Group 50G, Brevet Annan, fed the 2 Brenda K's. That one is the father, Lester, Strychnine, Trio, Robert Abel, the second, Diplomat Hotel Wash, the second, Ed Bell, Drag in Rowing Craft, 137 Bones, Jones, I Torso, NASA Parkway, Gonzalez, Film Dentist Daughter, XXX, KO, that's the knockout murder and mystery. And then Bobby the Cook, this is now coming from Bobby the Cook, Shy to RO, that's responding officer, sound drunk, woo, 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 went to find University, Alabama, Craven, sister, Park Shadows, Unit N, the UAW, that's United Auto Worker 887, A. Ibarra, who's in NASA, knew Paul Craven, November 9, 1971, grabbed 12-year-old at 77055, that's the zip code, Park, drop axe, hands, arm, 77089 zip code in the field, self-kidnap, that's another person, last name Self. Anyways, kidnap Rhonda Johnson, Sharon Shaw together, and then he's saying Kim 1373, 1373, yeah, 1373, 20cc bike to Alameda, to Alameda by Eye Cosmetics, and then it's saying Ed Bell grabbed the youth, go to 77583, that's the zip code, strangle, and at 64 and County Road 65, icy intersection. And then he said that Craven had given them ice cream. Anyways, that he's crazy. And so he's just telling on these people. And so he's telling who did what. He's trying to clarify because everybody at the time was thinking Zodiac might be doing this. So he's also clarifying who did what.
Gotcha. All right, so let me go ahead, Nolan.
So he's saying that attributing her Kimberly's murder to Ed Bell.
Yeah, Ed Bell. He's one of the Texas 545 killer suspects.
Interesting.
Huh, I hadn't even heard his name before, so.
Okay. She looks really mature for 16. She looks like a full-grown woman. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What was that, Harriet?
Oh, I was just going to say that all the details of where she was found, everything, the time, that all anagrams out to what the truth is. It's amazing. It's amazing how this is done. So somehow, some way, because of drugs and CIA, just like you're saying, cover jobs, this is all involved. And they're using this type of CIA intel community system. Then it's amazing.
All right, well, let me finish with this gal's story and where they went to and the suspects and everything involved, and we'll see if any of that matches up, because you did once again bring up Saudi Prince, or Saudi Prince, and that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. That is absolutely like mind-blowing what we're going to cover. But so it says it was also the first day of school after the Christmas holidays when Pitchford was abducted and her lifeless body was found in a rural area of Brazoria County, where bodies of other young women had been found in 1971. This raised the question, was her murder the work of a fifth killer to emerge from the shadows, or was she a victim caught in a twisted game orchestrated by a sole predator to taunt police? Investigators from the Brazoria and Harris County Sheriff's Office teamed up and divided the interviews of Pitchford's family members, classmates, teachers, and other possible witnesses to help piece together what may have happened during the final days of the teen's life that would cause her to cross paths with a killer. According to her father, Elmer Pitchford, now deceased, the family filed a missing person report when she failed to call or arrive home that evening. Kim was prompt in letting them know her whereabouts and knew to get permission before changing her plans. After speaking with the teen's best friend, Karen Fram, the family learned that Kim had borrowed money from her for lunch that day and was upset over her boyfriend, Jimmy Maddox, being in jail. You said mature, right, Nolan?
Yeah. Adult
15 years. Maddox, now 67, was just 17 when he joined the U.S. Army in 1972. Yeah, that's when Jack joined, was 17. In 1972, and was home on leave since the Christmas holiday. According to Maddox, he and two of his buddies had met Kimberly and her friends at the Trampoline, a popular teen hangout located on Cleckley Drive across from Alameda Mall on December 31st, 1972, to celebrate New Year's. Before midnight, Maddox's friend Ray drove everyone to Kimberly's house in the 8500 block of Winalea, where they all hung out and visited. Maddox and his friends, Ray and Phil, began wandering down the street and were arrested by police for breaking into cars. Ray and Phil were released on January 2nd, but Maddox was detained for being AWOL. I never saw Kimberly since that night, said Maddox. I didn't even get to go to her funeral. She was a sweetheart, and I've often wondered what might have happened between us because I was definitely going to contact her after I was discharged from the Army. According to Maddox, Kimberly was a strict young woman who spoke highly of her family and had no reason to run away. I was the wild one and wasn't even allowed to smoke if I wanted to be around her, Maddox said. The puppy love was mutual, and according to teachers, Kim was visibly upset during her 6th period class as well as the D hall she attempted prior to driver's ed. Maddox was unaware that Kim was worried about him. 2 of the last classmates to see Kim alive were Russell Soanes and Jimmy Hester, now both 66. According to Soanes, he was Kim's driving partner. Mr. Arthur Clark was our instructor, and I didn't really know Kim that well, mostly just in passing. I was real shy back then and didn't notice if Kim seemed upset or not because I was focused on driving. She sat in the back seat while I drove, and then we'd switch. We drove through a nearby neighborhood and parked alongside of the high school facing the baseball field. We got out of the car. I didn't notice which way she went, said Soanes. Hester had been waiting the entire hour in the school's doorway facing the parking lot for his class to start at 6 p.m. I remember seeing Russell get out of the car, but I didn't see Kim. I knew who she was, but I didn't know her personally, said Hester. I don't recall seeing anything out of the ordinary. It was as if Kimberly vanished into thin air before her body was found off a rural road in Brazoria County. Law enforcement worked tirelessly on her case for several months and conducted dozens of interviews and ran down every lead that came their way to no avail. Today, Brazoria County investigators continue to review the case on occasion, hoping to notice a detail that might have been overlooked or receive a tip that helps solve the case. So here's Edward Bell. Holy crap.
No,
Did you just get done? Yeah, okay.
He's coming up. He's connected to some people that Jack and his side don't like. Okay, that's anyways, yeah.
Who's he connected to?
He's connected to John Edward Walsh Jr., Robert Abel, the Demon, and that's the side that they're trying to bring down. Yeah, he does not like them. They don't like him. The side Jack is with. So he's happy to be telling on these people.
Well, I thought that these were some interesting suspects. So on Edward Harold Bell as a suspect, it says in 2011, a serial flasher, a former psychiatric patient named Edward Harold Bell, now deceased, claimed he was responsible for the murder of Pitchford, as well as the murders of at least 11 other young women in the early 70s. Bell made this claim while serving a 70-year sentence for the August 28th, 1978 murder of Larry Dickens, 26, who literally caught Bell with his pants down flashing neighborhood girls in Pasadena and took away his car keys to prevent his escape. When Dickens refused to give Bell his key, Bell put on his pants and reached for his .22 automatic pistol under the seat and fired a warning shot into the air and threatened Dickens to return his keys. Dickens refused again and was shot repeatedly and staggered to his driveway with Bell still in pursuit of his keys. After Dickens relinquished the keys, Bell went back to his truck, grabbed his rifle, and turned to fire a final fatal shot into Dickens' head. For Bell's claim to be within the realm of possibilities, one must ponder the likelihood of a serial killer regressing 7 years later to acts of exposure in front of children. I thought that was rather interesting because who digresses, right? Who goes from being a murderer to a flasher? It's usually like the flashing part comes first. Then you got to kill
obviously
somebody.
He had a violent streak.
Clearly,
Definitely.
he likely did not want to be caught by the cops for flashing, obviously, and he's going to do away with the one person who busted him doing it. But does that make him a killer again, how do you digress from being a serial killer? I killed people, and then 7 years later, I'm just a flasher? I don't know. That sounded a little...
Maybe he was both all along.
This Saul is saying that Ed Bell is also involved with the deaths of the white Brenda K. Jones and her father, the torso, anyways, of I-45. Anyways, so he was always a killer. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty blatant if you're just going to load somebody up with lead and then go get your rifle and come back and finish it off. So
That's
we
crazy.
were getting some
Yeah.
feedback. I'm hoping that's kind of cleared up at this point. But if anybody has the show open in another tab, make sure that you're only open once somewhere. All right, so it goes back. The question was posed to former FBI profiler Mark Young, who is now in private practice with Young Techs International. It generally follows that a sexually motivated serial killer continues with that type of behavior. There may be gaps between offenses due to many factors such as incarceration, old age, police activity, availability of victims while the offender is on the prowl, employment elsewhere, family intervention, or many other variables, said Young. We rarely, if ever, seen a prolific offender completely change and become a noticeably lesser offender, or, as you questioned, to go from the serial killing of many young female victims to only exposure and masturbation in front of children. Bell never provided any details on the unsolved cases that weren't already published in the old newspaper reports. So almost like there's up as some type of a patsy for these particular crimes, because I kind of believe what he says here. I mean, how do you become a killer and then go back to masturbating in front of kids? If you're used to sexually raping or molesting and then violently killing your victims, how do you go back to the lesser? I don't know.
Well, he
It
was
says-
very inconsiderate, to say the least.
Well, it's almost as if he wanted to get caught and arrested. He probably knew he had a dark side. You know,
Part
so
of him, yeah.
if you
Part of him.
can't arrest me for these killings that are linked to Robert Abel, who works for NASA, arrest
Well,
me
if
for
he
that.
wanted,
Get me
if
out,
he
you know.
wanted, if he wanted to be arrested, he simply just needed to sit there with the guy at the keys in his hand who was called the police to report him. Like, come on, you didn't have to kill the guy, right? You could have gotten yourself arrested without killing somebody.
I'm seeing that it's pretty much corrupt at that time. Sorry to say, Texas, it's a big state, but yeah, there's a lot of corruption going on there. But, you know, that's just my input there, because I've seen his name coming up several times. And, you know, so he finally does get arrested for something. And then he's, you know, there in jail saying, well, I am responsible for Kimberly Pitchford. But I found him.
I don't think no. I think
that.
that I don't think that he's responsible for Kimberly, and you're going to hear why as we finish off this stuff that I'm talking about. But it's just interesting that, again, they made a very good point about how one goes from being a criminal of one sort and evolves into a bigger, more progressive criminal, rather than digressing like we see that this guy is purportedly done if he literally was the killer. So it says, could other cases be connected? Although Pitchford's case appears to be an isolated incident, she was in fact the 12th young woman to be murdered in the surrounding area of Houston since June of 1971, and the third victim abducted from the South Belt area. The series of murders spans 4 counties and are collectively known as the mysteries of I-45. Colette Wilson, 13, vanished on June 17th, 1971. And we haven't gotten to that yet. I think I'm gonna skip past this because we've not gotten to these murders yet, but it is listing several of the murders that I have included for the I-45 murders, and we'll go through them chronologically when we get to them. Despite Pitchford's close proximity to the abduction and or dump sites of Linda Faye Sutherland, Allison Craven, and Colette Wilson, no links were publicly made since Sutherland and Wilson's killer was dead, and Craven's killer had already confessed and was in custody prior to Pitchford's deaths. So did you come up with Craven? Craven's killer.
Oh, definitely. Craven's name is in there, but I've done Allison Craven's, and I've done Gloria Gonzalez. I mean, but her name is
okay. We'll get to
showing up in this one solved.
Okay, so we'll get to yeah. So it says, did police catch the correct killers? News reports of the series of murders wide and prompted Lieutenant Governor Bill Hobby to contribute $8,000 towards a reward fund. Multiple law enforcement agencies joined forces, and between April and June of 1972, police had arrested and obtained confessions from 4 different men that solved a majority of the cases. Harry Andrew Lanham, Jr., 25, a Houston record driver, confessed on April 15, 1972, that he was present when Linda Sutherland was murdered, but pointed to Anthony Michael Napa, I'm going to guess, as being the trigger man. Lanham made a second statement on June 9th of 1972, implicating himself, and was also charged with the murders of Colette Wilson and Gloria Gonzalez. Henry Doyle Shufflin, Jr., the 22-year-old, a Vietnam veteran and son of a U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant, confessed on May 2nd, 1972, to the murder of Allison Craven. Anthony Michael Napa Jr., 24, a Vietnam veteran, confessed on June 6th of 1972 to being present when Linda Sutherland was murdered, but claimed Lanham was the trigger man. So they're going back and forth between each other.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Lloyd Self. Now, you talked about Self as well in that solve, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, he's definitely, and I think you'll find that there's other people that were saying Michael Lloyd Self is the one responsible for Johnson and Shaw.
Oh, well, let me get there.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So your solve comes up with Self, but Self that's not even part of the information that you used, right? In the solve. That had nothing to do. His name, Michael Lloyd Self, was not any part of it. Just came up as Self in the solve.
Yeah. Just anagramming.
Gotcha.
Said,
all right.
SELF. Wait a minute. And I looked it up. I said, okay, yes, we have Michael Lloyd Self. And I think,
So,
anyways, keep going. This is amazing.
So Michael Lloyd Self, 25, a gas station attendant and a volunteer firefighter, confessed on June 9th of 1972 to the murders of Rhonda Johnson and Sharon Shaw. All four men claimed the statements were false and were the result of coercion by law enforcement. Shufflin was under psychiatric care and stated he was easily pressured. Self claimed that Donald Ray Morris, the Webster police chief, held a gun to his head and demanded that he confess. Morris was arrested years later, moonlighting as a bank robber. Lenham and Napa were tried separately, but at the same time in Brazoria County in October of 1972, which gained national media attention. Both men took the stand in their own defense, with Lanham stating that Brazoria County officials had made a deal with him to protect his wife in exchange for his turning state evidence on Napa. It was also his understanding that the second statement he signed on June 9th, which implicated himself, was just a formality that couldn't be used against him. Lanham stated that the authorities had shafted him with lies. When Napa took the stand, he testified that the entire statement he signed on June 6th was false, and he had written it while being coached by law enforcement after he'd been beaten. He further claimed that he'd been told that he might be shot while trying to escape, an ominous statement that would come true but not for Napa. So this goes back to, how they were obtaining confessions from people,
That just tells me there's a possibility that some of these law enforcement might have been involved in the killings if they're so anxious to get false confessions.
Well, when we get to like Henry Lee Lucas and him attempting to take credit for 200 of these murders all over the United States under the watchful eye of the Texas Rangers, who's feeding him with the information that allows him to confess to things he didn't do. And it took one very brave attorney to stand up and call these Rangers out and say, you didn't commit this crime. You couldn't have been here because you were here. You were locked up. But here you are confessing to all these murders, and the Texas Rangers are looking like these glory hounds that are closing all of these 200 crimes and wiping them off law enforcement's books when all they're doing is feeding Henry Lee Lucas the information so that he can confess to things he didn't do. So that's coming. We'll get to that one. But this is exactly down the rabbit hole that I wanted to explain to everybody. But this is what they do. This is what they did to Bill Hirons in the lipstick killing cases.
Yeah, for sure there.
Mm-hmm.
Says the jury didn't buy their stories, and on October 20th, 1972, the jury came back with a guilty verdict for both defendants, with Lanham receiving 25 years and Napa receiving 50. Law enforcement had succeeded in getting two of the worst killers off the streets, but that same evening, a 15-year-old Knighton vanished after she left her family's home in Pasadena. Her mutilated body was found 3 days later. After the trial, Lanham was transferred to the Harris County Jail to await trial for the murders of Colette Wilson and Gloria Gonzalez. Montgomery County officials were also in line having dropped charges against their suspect for Adele Crabtree's murder as the results of Lanham's confession. But on December 30th, 1972, Lanham was shot and killed by authorities while trying to escape with two other convicts. 4 days later, on January 3rd, 1973, Kimberly Pitchford disappeared. So clearly, their stories, they might have been telling the truth, right? Like the bodies are still coming up.
Yep.
Right.
That they definitely knew something. So,
and this is referring to Lanham. This is referring to Lanham and Napa. Clearly these may not have been the suspects, but this is who they wanted to hang these crimes on. And they were looking like they were trying to pin them all on them when, in fact, the murders continued even after they were locked up and dead.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It points towards law enforcement being involved in some of them. or people with ties to law enforcement.
Well, they get desperate to close these cases and look again like glory hounds in the eyes of the public. And we got to get these off of, get it off the shelf. And we want the public to be proud of us. And we're just going to slam it on whoever we can slam it on.
That's terrible police work. That's a bad ethic. Yeah. You want to solve the crimes. You don't just get it over with and put it in a drawer.
Henry Lee Lucas, they were trying to do 200 and some murders on one person. All right. So on January 27th, 1973, I found a suspect sample handwriting, in which case they're asking the suspects to write portions of the Zodiac letters. This is one of 2 letters written by the same person, and this one is dated 1973. And then we have another one that will come up in 1974, and we get to see some more attributes that they're looking for when they're asking for the sample. So it's not necessarily that they're just looking for them to write portions of the Zodiac letters, but they're actually asking them to specifically write the Belltop A. And we'll see that in the future. During this particular time frame, February 6th, 1973, Jack is kicked off of disability per his February 13th, 1974 lawsuit. He does not have an income at this point, and his attorney is requesting that he be compensated for February through July 8th of 1973 in that particular work comp case for disability that he was not receiving. So Jack has no form of payment at this point. He is not working. He's pretty much free to come and go as he pleases. And every time we've known Jack to be able to come and go as he pleases, he's definitely back and forth visiting mom.
What was the disability for? And do you know what the entity was that he worked for that was paying him?
It was a work comp suit, as far as I knew, against South Lake Tahoe Linen Company. So he suffered he claimed a work comp injury against them for an injury in 72. Harriet thinks that this was him jumping out of the plane as D.B. Cooper and injuring himself.
I think so too.
And he was the linen driver at the time. So, and maybe that's where somebody with Nixon said, go ahead, give him the industry, whatever, you know what I mean. Go ahead and give it to him because, for cover.
They get a lawyer and they can do it. A lawyer will force it.
Well, that brings us to our back in Oakland in February of 1973. I don't actually, let's see, but had written in. So Rose Cole, February of 1973, was abducted from Chinatown. And let's see. Rose Cole was last heard from in February 1973, which was a letter that was mailed at the time, but had been written in December 23rd of 1972, which was her 16th birthday. It told her of having run away from Synanon. Oh, so probably like that Synanon, is that like a recovery?
I thought it was some sort of cult.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying. It's a recovery and a cult. I didn't do her yet.
Well, this one got interesting because Stephen Dewhurst brought this particular person into our lives. I wasn't aware of her. I didn't find anything. I got this out of his book. So anyways, so it says, told of her having run away from Synanon in Oakland, California, and living on the streets of Chinatown. She mentions she had been sick and that she thought she had a kidney infection. She said she would not be writing again until she turned 18 because she was afraid that Synanon would find her. That's creepy. Like, are you forced into this thing and then you can't get away? They're going to hunt you down, track you, and bring you back, kind of thing.
That's what Scientology does too. If you leave Scientology, they come after you.
Yeah, but being at that age, she would have been, in the custody of somebody. Somebody had to be her guardian at 16.
You'd think.
She was a runaway.
Yeah. So
this particular image right here is an image that was in the 110 roll of film that was developed from Jack's belongings. And so Dewhurst had taken the actual negatives and produced some of these. So a background on Dewhurst, he was a professor at Arizona State University. I'm not sure if he still is or if he's there. He bought the book rights from Dennis to write about Jack and the Zodiac, and he paid, I think, Dennis something like $50,000 for it. And then when he took these rolls or these negatives, when he was supposed to process them, because I believe that one of his main jobs was doing photographic identification for things like NASA and other entities that wanted to make out what's in this picture. So he developed this particular negative, and it to me it always looked like this doll, right? You know which one I'm talking about, Harriet? It looks like a doll.
Which one?
It was one of the negatives. It was the one that he said was Rose Cole. So Stephen Dewhurst believed that this image was that of Rose Cole. There's also this ominous figure over to the right here that looks kind of scary, almost as if it's a man's head with blood coming down on it. But again, this is just interpretation because it's so blurry you can't really see what's going on. So
it looks like a nose and an ear.
That's the company that he was working with, very familiar with. So I'm on the fence whether that's Rose Cole or not, because that's what they were doing from high up above. This is where Terry B will understand, way high up, and people like Dewhurst were identifying what's in those images. That's amazing that Dewhurst came into Dennis's life like that. Anyways, keep going.
But he also what's that?
Dewhurst never wrote the book, though, right? Even though he paid for the rights.
No, he wrote the book.
Yeah.
He wrote the book. Okay, he did. Okay.
He wrote it with Dennis, but
he also failed to return many of Dennis's negatives. So he processed, and when Dennis asked for it back, Stephen Dewhurst denied him of it. That's one of their falling outs. That's why they stopped talking and working together, because he was withholding evidence from Dennis that Dennis had wanted, and he was merely supposed to just process those images and then, maybe comment on them, see what he found. But he ended up keeping a majority of them, and that upset Dennis. All right.
Yeah, it's weird how everyone keeps evidence in this case, and Dennis and you never get it back.
I watched so much evidence just be taken from Dennis on a constant basis. Everybody had their hand in the pot, and everybody walked the opposite direction with it, and then it was never to be found again.
Yeah.
All right. So
the hood. Man, keep going.
Yeah, the hood. The hood. If the FBI says that there's no DNA on it, they can't find anything that would allow them to make an identification, and they're not convinced that it is part of the case, then why keep it? Why not return it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, that was the most amazing thing. And when you look in the book that Dewhurst did publish, you'll see clear details of how the cross and the circle is sewn. Like I think there's some information out there online somewhere that only specifically described the yellow thread and everything. I mean. So the hood disappeared, but the truth didn't.
The hood didn't disappear. It went to the FBI. It was just never returned, even though they said they did testing on it and couldn't find anything that would allow it to be tied to the murders.
That's what I'm saying. It disappeared. It was supposed to go back to anyways, but yeah.
What's the title? What's the title of the Dewhurst book involved? Period.
Devil of the
Demon of the Southwest Wind. Demon of the Southwest Wind.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure I have that book if anybody wants to read it. It's more of him pontificating about himself and his position in this whole Zodiac saga, where he was, his family, blah, 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 while he throws in a little bit about Jack and the Zodiac.
Wow.
All right. So that brings us to our next murder, which is March 2nd of 1973. It says she was missing to March 12th. So 10 days, 1973, was found. Susan McLaughlin, 18 days before vernal equinox. And she's found in Kybers, California, which is the area up towards where Jack is about to move to. So Mount Occam, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So Kybers is up 50, right?
Something like that.
No, you're right, up 50. Yeah. Past Placerville.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, so
Closer to
that
Tahoe. Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure that that's the area, Pollock Pines area, where Mount Occam is, that they're just about to move to. Anyway, so it says body of slain co-ed found near Khyber. Susan G. McLaughlin, a 19-year-old college student, left the Berkeley campus of the University of California Friday, March 2nd, just before noon. Her almost nude body was found Saturday morning about 2 miles east of Khyber's by a couple of pine cone gatherers from British Columbia. She had been stabbed in the back and chest. One wound pierced her heart. How did she get there? And more importantly, with whom? Also, when? So she's literally coming out of the Berkeley campus and ends up in Khyber's. This is that kind of circle of proximity that I see going on with these murders, where the abduction and then the dump is within about a 2-hour circumference of each other, but still within the vicinity or within a 2-hour radius of where Jack's living.
Does the story say where she's from?
She was a college student, left Berkeley campus of the University of California on Friday, March 2nd. So she was in Berkeley going to school.
But where her parents live?
Oh, let me see if we get to that. Sheriff Ernest Carlson says that she was murdered where she was found, a steep, heavily timbered area about 150 yards north of US 50 above an old abandoned section of the highway. So this brings me back to like the DC Freeway Phantom stuff, where he's doing dumps near overpasses and the freeway, which is also the I-45 murders, again, because it's related to a freeway. Carlson says the girl apparently did not struggle with her killer. Pine needles on the ground seemed undisturbed, but it has rained and snowed during the week before she was found, and this could account for the fact that no footprints or other tracks were observed at the scene. It is not yet known whether she was sexually molested, but it seems likely because some of her clothes were cut off and scattered nearby. Investigators believe she may have been held captive for a time because there were adhesive tape marks on her wrists and the sleeves of her dark brown suede jacket, which she was still wearing. No tape was found. Neither was the death weapon, believed to be a double-edged dagger-type knife. Now, that double-edged dagger-type knife reminds me of the report of the Lake Berryessa stuff. Bayonet style, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Military weapon.
All right. Right. So according to the preliminary autopsy report, she had been dead 2 to 4 days, but this has been revised to up to 6 days. However, it hasn't been ruled out that she died the day she was abducted during that night or the following morning. Her backpack was found Saturday, March 3rd, about 8 miles from the body. Again, we have a separation of personal belongings. You know, we've seen this in the Santa Cruz, where some of the Santa Cruz dumps, where their belongings were found dropped on the way to Santa Cruz, where the body ends up being dumped. One report indicated from a car toward the river, but another report says that it was turned in by a San Anselmo man who found it on top of a bathroom at Alder Creek Campground. So now we have the campground relation. The man who had been staying at a cabin there is to be questioned regarding the exact spot where the pack was located. That the pack belonged to Miss McLaughlin was not determined until after her body was found. Miss McLaughlin, an attractive, striking blonde with green eyes, 5'11" and weighing 140 pounds, was planning to go to Sacramento for the weekend, as she did almost every weekend. So now we have back to a Sacramento relation. So she was last seen in Berkeley.
Where her family was.
Something. Let's see what that says. For the weekend, as she did almost every weekend. Her mother, Betty, twin sister Robin, younger sister Wendy, 10, and brother Bruce, 17, all lived in Sacramento. Good call, Nolan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does her boyfriend. Her father is a structural engineer in Indonesia. He is not. He has been notified. Private cremation services were held Tuesday at East Lawn in Sacramento. Detectives are almost certain that she took a bus to Sacramento. She may have started to hitchhike then, or did she call someone to pick her up? Authorities haven't ruled out that she obtained a ride in the Bay Area. Also, was more than one person involved in her abduction. Did she spend, and then I lost the rest of that article. Don't have that to continue. Either way, we have now the Sacramento relation that makes her closer to Khyber's. Now makes even more sense. If she had actually made it to Sacramento before she was abducted and then ended up in Khyber's. That's screaming Jack all day long. He is definitely in this area. All right.
The sexual assault is not one of his MOs, though. So
what's that?
Even though she was partially nude and her clothes were found here and there, it's not conclusive whether she was sexually assaulted, right?
Correct. Yeah, it is not indicating that.
Right.
At the same time, we still have Charlie.
Leaving a cryptic message. It's leaving a cryptic message, and I believe that was one of the reasons why she was originally on Robert Graysmith's Zodiac list. What happened to his Zodiac list? Everything's changed the last 20 years. Anyway, That's my input there. I haven't done her yet, but listening to all those clues, that was the reasons why she ended up on Graysmith's list.
Right. She is one of the people on his list, and that's how I came across many of these particular individuals. At the same time, we still have April of 1973, Charlie Chopoff is still working over little boys in the New York area. Again, I did not attribute this to the Zodiac Killer. It was just another serial killing spree that was going on at the same time that I threw in here. And it was 2 9-year-old boys, Wendell Hubbard and Louis Ortiz, would be stabbed to death before having their penises removed, which led to the killer being nicknamed Charlie Chopoff. Again, not likely.
I have questions, real quick ones. Do either of you recall what kind of knife was allegedly used in the Lake Berryessa attacks?
Brian Hartnell described it a couple times. In some cases, he talked about there being rivets. He talked about it being a bayonet-style black knife, but then again talked about it being a wooden handle with rivets that had tape on it. So the information is back and forth, but the Zodiac definitely had a knife, obviously, on one hip and his gun, which that's a Jack thing all day long.
It make any difference whether it's double-edged or single-edged, though.
No.
I think it's a Glock. I have to look because I actually anagrammed the evidence. That's where I got the idea of anagramming the description. So I think it's a Glock.
What's a Glock?
Oh, the knife. It's a particular Glock knife used, for in hunting and in fishing. Like if you're going to the lake. I have to look it up.
So it's been a single-edged knife, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to April 22nd of 1973. We have Easter pictures with Nora and the family. And I know that Jack is present at this point in time because additional pictures with these couples in it with the baby and so forth are seen in front of a truck. And then beyond that truck, we can actually see Don, who is Jack's brother. So I know that these pictures are definitely showing the presence of Jack now. And this may be the place. Well, Dennis remembered them moving to Mount Auckham in 1974, but this is obviously not the apartment that Nora was living in when Jack actually met Nora and the family. So I don't know if they're at someone else's house at this point or if this turns out to be the house that they actually purchased when they moved to Mount Auckham. But nice wooded area. We had a couple more murders in the San Francisco area on May 29th, 1973. Rosa Vasquez on Arguello Boulevard at the entrance of the Golden Gate Park, San Francisco, California, which is interesting because Criminal Minds was one of those ones that did a episode on a copycat of the Zodiac Killer, and that's where they talked about clues being left from one crime being planted at the next crime. Was the first time I heard of that, and then started seeing that the Zodiac talked about leaving clues and that he had left clues and all of this stuff, kind of making it all make a little bit of sense. But I thought this was interesting because it was at the Golden Gate Park. This is on the murder map for Sandy Betts. She was 20 years old, worked for Letterman Army General Hospital as a key punch operator in the Presidio where Paul Stein was killed. Donna Lass worked also at Letterman Army General Hospital and worked there until June of 1970 before she moved to South Lake Tahoe and became a victim herself. The Zodiac 13th victim card actually had key punch holes for 13 victims in it that had been mailed earlier. So we've already seen this particular card. Oh, that okay. Well, I'm going to have to pick this one up. We've got 1 minute left at this point, but we can just pick this one up next week and continue on with the interesting information about the key punch, because I know Harriet has a lot to say about that, right?
Yes, I do.
Is there anything anybody would like to add?
Me first, because my God, Kudos to you, Terry B. No, Terry B. The Goldman Sachs 2007. That is an amazing.
No. I don't have time. I meant like sign off kind of thing. I said we have less than a minute now.
Kudos to you guys.
And we don't
work. It's the offspring of your work.
I want to say, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Stay cool. It's roasting here if you're in California, but stay inside that AC and stay hydrated. Everybody, have a good week. We'll see you next Friday.
Monday. Monday.